So you know how you sent over that article from Spavelous magazine?
Yeah.
The one about mullein leaf
Uh-huh.
and how it's supposed to be good for your lungs?
Right.
Well, we are diving deep into that today.
Cool.
We are going to break down all the details from that article,
Awesome.
see what's up with this mullein leaf.
I mean, it's pretty fascinating, isn't it?
Totally. I mean, it just seems like kind of an unassuming plant,
Yeah.
but there's all this buzz about it and all the stuff it can do for you.
Especially when it comes to like respiratory health.
Exactly. So basically, we are on a mission here
Okay.
to figure out why mullein leaf is getting so much attention these days for respiratory wellness.
I think it speaks to a larger trend
Oh,
where people are kind of like rediscovering
yeah.
these ancient remedies.
Yeah.
Like
Ah.
going back to nature and thinking, huh,
Like maybe our ancestors were onto something.
exactly.
Yeah.
And this article about mullein leaf
Mhm.
is like a perfect example of that. It's like this plant has been used for centuries.
I know it's called Verbascum thaxis or something like that, right?
You got it.
Verbascum thapsis. But I think most people just know it as mullein leaf.
Right.
It's funny because when you actually see this plant,
Yeah.
it's not what you'd expect. It's got these big, fuzzy leaves.
They are kind of soft and velvety.
And a tall stalk with these vibrant yellow flowers.
It's pretty striking, actually, when it's in full bloom.
It is. And you know what surprised me?
What's that?
Just how common it is.
Oh, yeah. It grows like everywhere.
I mean, the article mentions it's just popping up all over the place.
In ditches and meadows.
Roadsides, abandoned lots.
Like you said, it's a real survivor.
Like all over America, which is funny because it's not even native.
Right. It actually originated in Europe and Asia.
Oh, in North Africa too, I think I read.
Yeah.
And it's a biennial plant. Did you know that?
Meaning
It needs 2 years to complete its whole life cycle
from tiny seed
to a flowering plant.
to setting seed again.
Exactly. But honestly, the biggest surprise for me
I'm intrigued.
was learning that mullein leaf is part of the snapdragon family.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
That is unexpected. I mean, you think of snapdragons.
Those delicate little flowers.
Yeah, and then you've got this like rugged mullein plant.
So different. But okay, so we've talked a bit about what it looks like,
Yeah?
where it comes from.
Uh-huh.
But let's get into why people actually use this plant.
Okay. Yeah, the article really digs into all that.
Right, like the traditional uses of mullein.
The stuff that people have been doing for centuries.
Exactly. And it seems like it was used for all kinds of things.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Like coughs and colds. The article mentions that a lot.
Classic mullein use.
Like when you have that scratchy throat.
that tickle in your throat that just won't quit.
Exactly. So mullein was traditionally used to soothe that and calm those coughs.
That's like giving your throat a warm hug.
But it wasn't just for the common cold.
No, it was for more serious respiratory issues too,
Like what kinds of things?
like bronchitis, asthma, any kind of breathing troubles, really.
So it was used to help people breathe easier
Yeah, like open up those airways.
and calm down inflammation in the lungs.
That demulcent action is really key there.
Yeah, and that makes sense because I know it was also used for just plain old sore throats, too.
Right.
Not even related to a cold or anything.
Just a simple sore throat, Mullein to the rescue.
Now, this one really surprised me.
Oh, what's that?
It says here they used to put it in oils for ear infections.
Really?
Yeah, to help with earaches.
Huh. I never knew that.
Me neither. But it just goes to show how versatile this plant is.
Right, it's like our ancestors had this whole natural pharmacy at their fingertips.
Seriously. And they didn't just use it internally.
Yep.
The article says it was used on the skin, too.
For like wounds and burns.
Yeah. And even for general inflammation and aches and pains,
Like muscle aches.
things like that.
So it's like this internal and external healer.
It is. It's pretty incredible when you think about it.
It really is. But okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Right.
Let's talk about the science.
Like what's actually in this plant.
What gives it these almost magical healing properties?
Right, because the article talks about the magic inside the plant.
Exactly. Like what are those key compounds that make mullein work its magic?
So first up, we have mucilage.
Mucilage.
The article calls it nature's soothing gel.
Which is a pretty accurate description.
So what is mucilage exactly, and how does it do that soothing thing?
Okay, so basically mucilage is this complex carbohydrate.
Okay.
And when it gets wet,
Uh-huh.
it forms this gel.
Okay.
And that gel coats and protects irritated tissues.
So like in your throat if it's sore.
Exactly. Or in your lungs if they're inflamed.
And it just creates this like protective barrier.
Yeah, and that helps reduce that raw, scratchy feeling.
So it's like nature's own cough drop.
pretty much. So you
Yeah.
can see why it would be traditionally used for coughs and sore throats.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so next we have flavonoids.
Flavonoids are like the superheroes of the plant world. I
Really?
mean, they do so much.
Like what?
Well, they are powerful anti-inflammatories,
Okay.
and they also have healing properties.
The article mentions both of those.
Yeah. So how do they do it? Well, flavonoids are these plant pigments.
Like the things that give plants their color.
Exactly. And they have this amazing ability to fight inflammation.
Okay.
Like at a cellular level, they basically stop those inflammatory molecules from being produced.
So they are like putting out the fire of inflammation.
Exactly. And at the same time, they're helping cells repair damage.
So they're like firefighters and also like little construction workers.
I like that analogy.
All right, so next up we have saponins.
Now, saponins are really interesting
Why is that?
because they can actually help loosen up mucus.
Which sounds kind of gross, but
But it's actually really helpful when you're congested.
yeah, because you want to cough that stuff up, right?
Exactly. And saponins make that happen.
So how do they do that?
Well, their molecular structure is kind of like soap.
What?
Yeah, it's true. They act like these tiny little detergents in your airways,
Okay.
breaking down that thick, sticky mucus.
I can get thinner and easier to cough up.
So if you imagine your lungs like pipes that are clogged,
Uh-huh.
saponins are like the Drano.
That's a great visual. Okay, so last but not least, we have antioxidants.
Ah, antioxidants.
Everyone's talking about antioxidants these days.
It's like the health buzzword of the century.
But what do they actually do? The article just says they fight off damage in the body.
Right. So it's a bit vague.
So can you break it down for us in terms of Mullein and lung health?
Sure. So think of it like this. Your body is constantly under attack
From what?
from these things called free radicals.
Free radicals.
Yeah, they are these unstable molecules that can damage your cells.
Like little troublemakers running around,
Exactly. And they contribute to inflammation and all sorts of chronic diseases.
including lung problems.
Right. But luckily we have antioxidants.
Which are like the good guys,
Exactly. They neutralize those free radicals.
like a cleanup crew.
Yeah. They mop up those troublemakers and protect your cells from damage.
So in terms of Mullein,
The antioxidants in Mullein help to keep your lungs healthy.
by fighting off those free radicals that can cause problems.
Exactly. So you can see how all these compounds work together.
Yeah, like a team.
The mucilage, the flavonoids, the saponins, the antioxidants.
It's pretty amazing.
It really is. Nature is so clever.
So the article goes on to list the top health benefits of Mullein for the lungs.
Based on all this science we've been talking about.
Exactly. So first up, it says Mullein is a natural expectorant.
Which we've already touched on a bit.
Right. The saponins help loosen mucus and make you cough it up.
So why is this so important for lung health?
I mean, it's not the most pleasant thing to think about.
True, but it's crucial for clear breathing.
Because if you have all that gunk in your lungs,
Yeah,
it's hard to get enough air.
exactly. And Mullein can help clear that out.
It can help with a chronic cough or if you're a smoker.
Or even if you have like lingering congestion after being sick.
Right. So anything that helps you get that mucus out is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next benefit is anti-inflammatory relief.
And this is where the mucilage and flavonoids really shine.
They work together to soothe and calm those irritated tissues,
Like we talked about, the mucilage provides that immediate coating,
like a protective layer.
and then the flavonoids work on that deeper level to reduce the inflammation.
So it's like a two-pronged attack on inflammation.
And this can be really helpful for a whole range of lung issues.
Yeah, like if your lungs are inflamed from bronchitis or asthma,
Or even just from a simple cold or flu.
Mullein can help calm things down and make you feel better,
Okay, so the third benefit is that it soothes irritated membranes.
which sounds kind of similar to anti-inflammatory relief.
It does, but the article uses a specific term, demulcent.
Right. So what's the difference?
Well, demulcent is any substance that specifically soothes and protects those mucous membranes.
The delicate linings of your respiratory tract.
Exactly. So it's like creating this protective barrier.
Yeah, like a gentle internal coating.
And that can really help reduce coughing and make it easier to breathe.
So while it overlaps with anti-inflammatory action.
The focus is more on that physical protection and soothing.
Exactly. Now, this next benefit is really interesting.
Okay, what is it?
It's antibacterial and antiviral protection.
So Mullein can actually help fight off infections.
Well, the research is still preliminary.
What do you mean?
Well, the article mentions these lab studies
Uh-huh.
where they tested Mullein extracts against certain bacteria and viruses,
Okay.
and the results were promising.
Like, what did they find?
Well, in the lab,
Yeah.
Mullein was able to inhibit the growth of some nasty bacteria.
Like what kind of bacteria?
Things like Staphylococcus aureus
Oh, wow.
and Klebsiella pneumonia.
Which can cause some pretty serious infections.
Exactly. And it also showed activity against influenza A.
The flu virus.
Yeah. And even some herpes strains.
So it's like Mullein has this potential to help fight off these bugs.
That's what the lab studies suggest.
But it's important to remember this is early research,
Yeah, it was all done in test tubes.
not in actual people.
Right. So we need more research to see how this translates to real-world situations.
But it's still exciting, right?
Definitely. It suggests that Mullein might have some real antimicrobial power.
Okay, so the final benefit highlighted in the article is that Mullein is rich in antioxidants.
Which we discussed earlier.
Right, and the article specifically mentions vitamin C, luteolin, quercetin, and camphorol.
All powerful antioxidants.
So what's the significance of these particular antioxidants for lung health?
Well, they are all known for their ability to fight oxidative stress.
Yours?
Basically damage to your cells from things like pollution, smoking, and just the normal aging process.
So like rust forming on metal.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
And oxidative stress is a big factor in many chronic lung diseases.
Like COPD and emphysema.
So the antioxidants in Mullein can help protect your lungs from that damage.
Potentially slowing down the progression of these diseases.
That's pretty incredible.
It is. And it just goes to show how much potential this plant has for supporting lung health.
So we've covered the traditional uses of Mullein,
And all those amazing compounds that give it its power.
but the article goes even further.
It dives into what the scientific research is saying about Mullein.
So what are some of the key findings?
One of the things they highlight is the role of polyphenols.
Polyphenols.
Yeah, they're these plant compounds that are known for their health benefits.
Okay.
And Mullein happens to be loaded with them.
So what do polyphenols do?
Well, many of them have strong antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties.
Which is interesting because
Those are the same properties that have been traditionally associated with Mullein.
exactly. So it's like the science is starting to catch up with what people have known for centuries.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And the article also talks more about Mullein's potential for fighting viruses and bacteria.
Those lab studies we discussed earlier,
Right. They're really intriguing.
because they show that Mullein can actually inhibit the growth of certain pathogens.
In the lab, at least.
Yeah, but still it's a big deal, right?
Oh, absolutely. It opens up a whole new avenue of research.
Like, could Mullein actually be used to prevent or treat respiratory infections in the future?
That's the big question. And it's one that scientists are starting to investigate.
Okay, and the last thing the article talks about in terms of the science is
The ability of Mullein to heal wounds and protect the lungs.
there was some research on that too.
Yeah. They found that Mullein extract could speed up wound healing.
Wow.
And it also seemed to protect those delicate epithelial cells that line the airways.
So what does that mean for lung health?
Well, it suggests that Mullein might be able to help repair damage in the lungs.
And keep them healthy.
Exactly. Which is really exciting because it could have implications for people with chronic lung conditions.
So it's not just about relieving symptoms.
It's about actually protecting and healing the lungs themselves.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. And it just goes to show how much we still have to learn about the power of plants.
So, okay, let's say someone is listening to this and they are thinking,
I want to try this Mullein stuff.
yeah, how do I actually use it?
Well, luckily, the article gives us some practical advice.
Oh, good.
It covers all the different ways you can incorporate Mullein into your routine.
So let's start with the most basic one, Mullein tea.
Classic.
How do you make it?
It's pretty simple. You take about 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried Mullein leaves or flowers,
Okay.
and you steep them in a cup of hot water for 10 to 15 minutes.
Like regular tea.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But here's the important part.
Yeah.
You have to strain the tea really well
Why is that?
because Mullein leaves have these tiny hairs on them.
Oh.
And those hairs can irritate your throat if you swallow them.
So you got to get rid of them.
Exactly. The article recommends using a fine mesh sieve or even a coffee filter.
Just to be sure you get all those little hairs out.
Right. And then you can drink the tea.
How much should you drink?
The article suggests 2 to 4 cups a day if you have active symptoms.
Like a cough or congestion.
Yeah. And if you have a sore throat, you can also gargle with the cool tea.
That makes sense.
Okay, so besides tea, there's also tinctures.
Tinctures.
Yeah, it's basically a concentrated extract of Mullein.
And how do you take that?
Usually you just take a dropperful or two
Okay.
and put it in a little bit of water or juice.
And how much should you take?
The article says 1 to 2 teaspoons, up to 3 times a day.
Okay.
But it's really important to use a high-quality tincture from a reputable brand.
Yeah, one that does third-party testing.
Exactly. You want to make sure you're getting the real deal.
And that there's no weird stuff in it.
Right. Now, another option is steam inhalation.
Steam inhalation.
Yeah. It's great for clearing congestion.
How do you do that with Mullein?
You basically just add some chopped mullein leaves or a few drops of mullein essential oil to a bowl of hot water.
Okay.
Then you lean over the bowl and carefully inhale the steam.
For how long?
The article says 10 to 15 minutes.
And that helps open up your airways?
Yeah, it can really loosen up that mucus and make it easier to breathe.
So if you have a stuffy nose or a cough, steam inhalation can be really helpful.
It can also be soothing for people with asthma.
Interesting. Okay, so besides tea, tinctures, and steam inhalation...
There's also capsules and supplements.
Oh, right. So you can just take a pill.
Exactly. Which can be more convenient for some people.
Especially if you're dealing with chronic lung issues and need to take it regularly.
Yeah. And the good thing about capsules and supplements is that they usually have standardized doses.
So you know exactly how much you're getting.
Right. But again, it's important to choose a reputable brand.
Okay, so we've talked about all these different ways to use Mullein.
But as with anything, there are some safety considerations.
Right. What are some of the things people should be aware of?
Well, first of all, the article stresses that Mullein is generally safe for most people when used as directed.
That's good to know.
But there are a few exceptions.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, you should never ingest the seeds.
The seeds of the Mullein plant.
Yeah. They contain compounds that are mildly toxic.
Okay.
So definitely avoid those.
Got it.
And the article also advises against using Mullein if you're pregnant or breastfeeding.
Unless you talk to your doctor first.
Right. It's always best to err on the side of caution when you're pregnant or breastfeeding.
Absolutely. Any other safety concerns?
Well, some people can get a rash from the hairs on the leaves.
Really?
Yeah. It's not super common, but it can happen.
So just be aware of that.
And as we mentioned before, it's important to strain the tea well to avoid those hairs.
Right. Because they can irritate your throat.
Exactly. And finally, the article recommends sticking to reputable brands for any Mullein products.
Especially tinctures, capsules, and things like that.
Yeah. You want to make sure they are high quality and have been properly tested.
Okay, so that's all good advice. Now, the article also has this little FAQ section.
Which is helpful.
Yeah, they answer some common questions about Mullein.
Like, can kids use it?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. What does it say?
It says that Mullein can be safe for kids, but only under the guidance of a healthcare professional.
So definitely talk to your doctor first.
Yeah. And they specifically advise against using undiluted essential oils or tinctures on kids.
Makes sense.
Another common question is whether Mullein can help smokers.
Oh, that's interesting. What does it say about that?
Well, it says that Mullein tea can help loosen mucus and ease a smoker's cough.
Which makes sense given what we know about its expectorant properties.
Exactly. But it also makes it very clear that quitting smoking is still the most important thing.
Obviously.
Mullein can't undo the damage of smoking.
It can just offer some relief.
Right.
Okay, what else does the FAQ cover?
What talks about how often you can drink Mullein tea.
And what's the recommendation?
It says you could drink up to 3 or 4 cups a day if you have active symptoms.
Okay.
But for long-term use, they suggest cycling.
Meaning?
Like taking it for 6 weeks, then taking a break for a week or 2.
And why is that?
Just to prevent your body from becoming desensitized to it.
So it keeps working effectively.
Exactly. And it also helps avoid any potential long-term side effects.
Good advice. What else?
Oh, the last question is about whether you can use fresh Mullein leaves for tea.
Instead of dried ones.
Right. And the answer is yes.
You can use fresh leaves.
But dried leaves are generally considered more potent.
Okay.
And they also have a much longer shelf life.
So dried leaves are probably the way to go.
Yeah, most likely. But either way, it's important to strain the tea well.
To get rid of those pesky hairs.
Exactly.
So, wow, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Mullein is a pretty fascinating plant.
It really is. And it's amazing how much traditional wisdom there is around it.
And how science is now starting to back up a lot of those traditional uses.
It's like this beautiful merging of ancient knowledge and modern science.
Exactly. So what do you think are the main takeaways from all this?
Well, I think the biggest one is that Mullein leaf has some serious potential for supporting respiratory health.
Yeah, it's not just an old wives' tale.
Right. It's a plant with real medicinal properties.
That can soothe coughs, clear congestion, and even potentially protect your lungs from damage.
And the best part is it's readily available.
You can find it growing wild in lots of places.
Or you can easily buy it in tea, tincture, or capsule form.
So it's accessible to everyone.
Exactly. And I think this whole deep dive into mullein leaf really speaks to a larger point,
Oh.
which is that nature has so much to offer us in terms of health and well-being.
Like we've kind of lost touch with that.
Yeah. But plants like mullein are a good reminder that there are natural solutions out there for a lot of our problems.
Solutions that have been used for centuries.
And that are now being validated by science.
That's pretty inspiring.
It is. And it makes you wonder what other plant allies are out there just waiting to be rediscovered.
Yeah, what other secrets does nature hold?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something for all of us to ponder.
To think about how we can reconnect with the natural world and harness its power to heal ourselves and live healthier lives.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
I think that's a perfect place to end our deep dive today.
I agree.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Cheers to that.